crazy over you.
Hello, any quintessentials. My name is Posy. Welcome to another edition. Today, we are talking about why it's important for you to put boundaries in place with your clients. I don't think we talk about this enough because we are all on the grind. We all want to make a good impression. So, sometimes you end up compromising yourself. The power dynamics may not be in your favor when it comes to the relationship between client and service provider. So what boundaries do we need to put in place when we are interacting with our clients? Stay tuned to find out more. The first boundary that I would say that you need to put in place when you are dealing with your clients is your time. Time is money. And I feel sometimes clients tend to forget this, can find ourselves being overly accommodating and putting ourselves in predicaments that we really can easily avoid by saying no. If you've watched my video on why it's important to say no to certain deals, then you'll understand why I'm saying this. If you haven't, please then check the playlist and have a look. Your time is one of the most important resources that you have as a service provider. And depending on the brief and the terms of reference that you have been contracted on, that will determine how much time you can actually spend on a specific project, on a specific activity, on a specific client. And perhaps there might be a crisis and things are going awry, then do by all means jump in. Of course, you never want to see a project fail. If you can help out, then do help out. If you are going to go above and beyond your client, do so within certain boundaries that you have set for yourself. And if those need to be clear to yourself and those need to be clear to your clients as well, so that you're not finding yourself at a later stage where you feel you've overworked yourself and now you have no recourse in terms of claiming for the hours that you've spent, the weekends that you've been doing overtime. And clients at times, they will come to you on the weekends and ask you to do certain things. If you're working on the weekends, are you still going to keep your normal rate that you use weekly, or are you going to charge a double rate during the weekend because that's now time away from you doing things with your family, etc., etc.? It's cutting into your personal time. Those expectations need to be clear, and you need to be transparent with your client that if they are going to be asking for extra time or extra resources on a specific project or an activity, they are going to have to pay for that resource and be upfront about it. If this is now going into the area of a new brief altogether, or the workload is just piling up, then it's very important for you to speak up so that you are not running into conflict with the client later because you didn't communicate your boundaries ahead of time and you've overserviced and now they are unwilling to pay for the time that you have spent working on their project when you could have been using that time and those resources on another paying client. So it's very important for you to make those expectations clear. And secondly, on communicating expectations, communicate your expectations with the client. Do not be afraid to communicate your expectations. The communication of the duties, the deliverables should not be limited to the interview process. You need to make sure that you are on the same page as a service provider to your client, and you are meeting their needs, and they themselves in turn are assisting you and supporting you in meeting your needs. For example, if you're a writer like myself and you need to be creating content, you need to communicate your needs for content. If they're not giving you the information, how are you going to communicate anything about the organization if you don't have the content that is required for you to fulfill your duties and your deliverables? And if they're not providing you with the material that you need to fulfill your duties, that must be communicated up front, because that is going to impact on the deliverables at the end of the month, at the end of the week, at the end of the project. So it's very, very important for you to be upfront with your client. As a service provider, it's very important for you to be proactive. Don't wait for them to come to you. Go to them in advance and build that friendship, build that rapport. You can formalize the conversations that you're having with your client telephonically or via Zoom meetings, formalize them, document them so that you have recourse and you are able to protect yourself should things escalate at a later stage or there's a breakdown in communication. You have a paper trail. Communication is so important, especially in business. Essentially, relationships keep businesses going. It's the people. You're not working in isolation. You're not working in a silo. You're working with people. And if you really enjoy the work that you do with a specific client, then you want to always make sure that you prioritize that relationship. And how do you prioritize a relationship? It's through honest and open communication without fear or worry about the power dynamic, them being the client, them paying you, so now you can't come back and critique. It should never be that way. You need to be open and honest. And if there are things that are happening that are challenges, that are impediments to you delivering a service, those must be communicated openly, clearly, and timeously as well, to avoid situations that could blow up. Late payments is another boundary that you need to put with your client. Perhaps you work for a state-owned organization and there's specific protocols and there's specific systems that are in place with supply chain management in terms of how payments are run. It is difficult. You need to put those boundaries in place when it comes to late payments. I mean, a late payment of a couple of days, a couple of weeks, perhaps you may be able to sustain your business. But late payments that go on for months on end, for years on end, it hampers your business seriously because you are unable to pay for your overheads, you are unable to pay salaries, you are unable to pay suppliers. So that actually is a reputational risk on your side. You have to communicate the need for timeliest payments from your clients because it does affect the daily running of your business. Do not be shy to follow up on payments. That's one thing I've learned over the years. If there's a payment or an invoice that's outstanding, don't sit quietly and cross your fingers and hope that it's actually being processed. Pick up the phone, call your clients, make relationships with the team in the supply chain management, in the finance department, whoever's pulling the trigger. Whoever is pulling the trigger where it comes to your retainer is concerned, know those people, build relationships with them so that when you are having problems in terms of payments, you are able to contact them and you can get feedback. And if they need that extra push to get your invoice through, to make sure that it's processed and paid, you are able to do that because you have those relationships. But never, ever, ever be shy to follow up on a payment, a late payment, because I mean, your entire business rests on you having revenue, you having a constant income stream. So when you're strained, then you're putting yourself at a risk. Ask for your money, but ask for it politely. And then this one could be controversial, but I would say another boundary that you need to put in place is in terms of workspace and also the activities that come with working with certain clients. Some people are not comfortable to be in communal workspaces. And as consultants, at times we are expected to be warm bodies that go to the office every now and then. Personally, I think you should definitely communicate that if you're worried that you are going to contract an illness, your health is your highest currency at this point, because if you're not healthy, then the business is going to suffer. And if you're a small business, the business might come to a complete standstill if you are unable to actually fulfill your daily duties because you're wearing multiple hats, ensuring that the work is going on and you are essentially the centerpiece and the heartbeat of the business. If you are not comfortable going to in-person meetings, in-person workshops, communicate that, set those boundaries. Instead of having meetings with a whole bunch of people, maybe request for an alternative meeting setup, but do not be afraid to say no. It's a relationship. You need to build those boundaries where you are able to say, no, I actually cannot make it. Can we schedule a different time? Or no, I cannot make it. Can we do a Zoom meeting instead? It really should not be a deal breaker insofar as the work is concerned, if you are in fact actually delivering on the service that you had promised that you would deliver on. And then the last boundary, which is the most important, the client cannot expect you to service them outside of the confines of the scope of work that they have provided you. Be very familiar with the terms of reference and what has been scoped. And if you are able to support and help in a time of need, and that needs to be a once-off event or a crisis moment, it cannot be a habitual request where you are expected to do work that you have not been assigned, that you are not being paid to do in your contract. Say no. Because as I've mentioned before in my videos, if you haven't checked out my videos on how it is that you should charge your rates, you are going to find yourself compromised, over-servicing, and stay within the confines of those boundaries. And then I think I'll put a bonus point in the boundary, in terms of the boundaries that you need to put in place with your client. I think respect. There needs to be mutual respect for each other. Yes, you're a service provider. Yes, you are working for them. You are giving them a service. But that means that there needs to be mutual respect from your side and from their side as well. I say this to say that you should never allow a client to speak to you anyhow, or to be abusive or manipulative or just downright controlling. Never allow a client to do that. You are there to perform a service. You are there to perform. You've got a skill set, you've got competencies, and you are there to solve a specific problem. That doesn't mean that it gives the client a right to speak to you anyhow. And just because you're a service provider, that doesn't mean that you don't have the right to actually stand up for yourself and say, no, I don't want to be spoken to in this way. I don't appreciate your rude comments, or in certain situations, you might even find yourself being, sexually harassed through inappropriate jokes and gesture. Yes, do not be afraid to communicate your discomfort if you find yourself in those kind of environments. And if a client is rude to you, let them know and communicate with them and set up a meeting with them and communicate your grievances in a professional manner, and make sure that you're also calm. Communicate your grievances, and do not allow a client to get used to being disrespectful, either in the way that they communicate with you, be disrespectful with your time, be disrespectful with the work that you provide them. Those boundaries have got to be in place, and put them in place early so that you're not running into problems later. Because if you let things slide early on, it means you're going to have to keep letting things slide as the relationship progresses, and then you are not able to stand up for yourself because it's too late now. You've allowed them to be manipulative and abusive. Give yourself 24, 48, 72 hours to respond if there is an altercation, so that you're not emotional when you are confronting them, but do exercise positive confrontation. It's easier said than done, but it has to be done. Otherwise, you are going to run into this problem in the future with them and with other clients. So those boundaries are very important. What other boundaries should we be putting in place when we are dealing with our clients? When do we say no? How do we say no? What have your experiences been with your clients as a service provider? And give us the tips. Comment below. Thank you so much, Quintessentials, for watching this episode. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers. Can't seem to forget, can't get you out my head. Here's the verdict, and I'm crazy over you.